Today we're in Oyo, north of Madrid, testing the Crafty XR. It has to be one of the best looking e-bikes on the market, and it is a rocket ship. Let's find out how it stacks up. Riders, welcome back to Sans Bikes, where you know we only talk e-bikes, and today we're in Oyo doing the 4-week test on the Crafty XR from Mondraker. We're going to go into full details on this beast. But first, let's thank the sponsors. Schwalbe making amazing e-bike tires, and Insta360 making the smallest action camera on the market. And also riders, if you like this type of e-bike weekly content on YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, put a comment below. It really does help out those algorithms. The Crafty XR is a 170/150E trail bike, rolling on 29 wheels, full factory Ohlins suspension, new Bosch smart system with the Gen 4 motor and a whopping 750 watt internal battery. And what about that forward geometry from Mondraker? Isn't it crazy long? Well, that's what I thought, but actually in a large, the one that I've been testing, it's got a reach of 480 with a 35mm stem. And if you look at standard trail bike numbers these days, reaches are going from like 470 up to like 491 in the new Trek Rail. So I would say that this is a pretty standard size trail e-bike in 2022, and showing that Mondraker were forward thinking with their geometries back in the day. With a 64.5 head tube angle, the XR isn't out of place on enduro DH trails. 75-degree seat tube angle, and with a 455 chainstay. I hear you riders, that is a pretty long chainstay, but maybe I've got it wrong. And there is the age-long conversation or argument going on between riders, bike engineers, if a short chainstay or a longer chainstay is better. Okay, so what have I found out in the last month of riding the Crafty XR? Well, riders, it's an absolute rocket ship. Whoa, take it easy there, it's loose rocks. I found it with the 455 chainstay and the 480 reach, a very stable, very well balanced bike, that with the 170 on the front, so the XR, not the standard Crafty. I just found it with that 64.5 degree head tube angle. I definitely found it a benefit, and this bike, is not out of place on hardcore enduro and even some downhill trails. I didn't think I'd ever say this, but the 29ers with a 455 chainstay make it such a stable, predictable bike, and traction for absolute days. Definitely enjoying the Ohlins at high speed. Okay, but you know, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Where this bike rocks when it's open and you know, not hard switchbacks, it is definitely harder to muscle around in those tighter corners. But as I always say, you got to pick your battles. This bike is so stable and so confident at high speeds. One thing I noted, because this bike is super planted and stable, it's not the easiest bike to get off the ground. It does jump well. You need to have a decent lip and a decent landing. Like if you want to pop off rocks and stuff, this bike's super planted. It's not that good at that. But mind you, I did do a nasty 9-meter drop, like step down. I do have witnesses, but unfortunately I have no video proof because my friends did not record it. Look at that, through that. So nice, so stable. Can just attack it. I really think this bike has allowed me to push it a bit harder, but without risking. So the XR is a good trail bike, a good enduro bike. It can have that occasional trip to the bike park, but where I think it really shines is technical hill climbing. Check out that, riders. That is crazy, super steep and gnarly. And why I think it is a good technical climber, that longish wheelbase, a bit of a higher bottom bracket. I've actually noticed not that many pedal strikes is really good, and the absolute mental power of the Bosch Gen 4. And the trick is I drop my seat a little bit lower. Don't go too hard too quick. You want to get some traction, and then you want to just easy go. If you go too hard, the back wheel's just going to spin out. And here we go, riders, up the nasty hill climb. You don't want to start too early. You don't want to put too much force down on those pedals, but the Mondraker Crafty XR is a sensational climber. I'm not going to go into too much detail on the Bosch Smart System because in the coming weeks, I'm going to do a massive deep dive on this system. But in short, I'm absolutely blown away with the Bosch Gen 4 with the new Smart System. I actually had to speak to Bosch to check some information because I thought they hadn't changed the motor, and they haven't. But the Trek rail that I tested 6 months ago, the motor on that felt a lot different to what I'm riding and what I'm testing on the Crafty XR. I felt definitely the motor had more torque, low end torque, more like a Bros. So, you know, really pulls you up the mountain easier. I also found it quieter under load. It wasn't as grindy, but it is a brand new motor, so maybe it will wear in a little bit. And next to no rattle, and this is a massive one for me and for a lot of riders out there. I really don't like that rattle. And I'm gonna say 100% in the Crafty XR, in this model and in this motor, I'm getting next to no rattle or very little rattle. And that does come down to how the frame's designed and how much it amplifies that sound. And so on this bike, it makes next to no noise, which is a massive win. As much as I love the Bosch motor, it is fantastic. The new app, the smart app's not that smart. It doesn't do a lot yet. You can't attach your heart rate. You can't get mapping. You actually can't really get much. But when I did speak to Bosch, they said, watch this space. I mean, it has only just been released, so I'm sure we're going to see firmware updates in the near future. And the remote, and my mum said if I don't have anything nice to say, I shouldn't say anything at all. The remote, you know, they've had another crack at it. It's not that good. It's a bit too big, it's a bit ugly, and it's a bit too sensitive. When you're climbing up technical hill climbing and you want to go up or you want to go down, you can actually hit it 2 or 3 times, changing your assistance. And I found it a little bit Mickey Mouse. And clearly the Crafty XR with the Bosch 750 watt battery is going to be a range monster. I haven't done a range test. I will do it soon on this bike. But 6 months ago when I did do the test on the Trek Rail, the 625, which is 20% smaller, I got around the same vertical climbing and same distance as the Levo with a 700. So I would imagine this one is going to get around 2,000 meters of vertical climbing. But right, stay tuned for the deep dive on the new Bosch Smart System coming in the next couple of weeks. So now let's go on to Mind, which is a telemetry system from Mondraker, which really helps you set up your e-bikes for the first time. So basically you go into the app and you put in your weight and the style of riding you want to do. And then it helps you set your sag and takes you step by step, setting up your compression and rebound. And then the rest of the other parts are a little bit like a Garmin. So it records your rides, it records your altitude, your kilometers, your speed, but it actually does a little bit more. It actually shows you your jumping, how long you're jumping, and how much airtime you got from your ride, which is awesome bragging rights at the pub. And also, more importantly, I think, it shows you if you're bottoming out your suspension or how much suspension you're using. So that really helps you get your bike balanced to start with, and also using the full travel. I think it's a fantastic option for beginner riders or also advanced riders because it really does help you get the most out of your suspension. As much as I love the Mind system, and I think it definitely gets you a very quick baseline tune of this e-bike, I would like to see it sort of evolve a little bit more than that, because after a couple of rides, you can go back home, you can look at the data and say, okay, I've been bottoming out the front 6 times in my ride and the back 10 times. But I would like to take it a little bit further than that and give suggestions for what you should do, because I kind of know what I would do, but a lot of riders out there wouldn't. So I'd like to see that just evolve a little bit more. But I'd say for 1 year old, they've done a fantastic job. And one of the most asked questions, how is the Ohlins suspension? I've been wanting to try Ohlins for years now. It's my first time. I'm gonna say, I bloody love it. They are really good. Like, they're not like the forks, the 38 forks here, they're not as plush as a Zeb or a 38. Well, that's my finding. I've done about a month riding on it, but it gives you more of a race feel. I don't know, for my BMX background, I don't really like a full, really plush ride. So this is a little bit firmer, but it feels super supportive, and I really like the feel of it. The rear shock for me, I mean, if I'm 100% honest, I probably couldn't tell that much between an X2 and this one. And the XR has Mondraker's Zero suspension system, which I've been really impressed with. And let me try and explain it. To the naked eye, it looks like a standard suspension system, but actually from the bottom and the top is compressing the suspension stroke. And it's hard to explain, and it does sound very cliche, but it does feel like you're kind of floating above those rocks, above the chunder. Well, let's think about a mogul skier. You know how their knees just go up and down, up and down, up and down? I kind of feel like, because it's compressing from the bottom and the top, you feel like you're kind of more like attached to the bike, like you're moving with the bike. And I really like the feel. It's my first time on the Zero system, but I'm gonna say one thing, in the setup, in the first 2 or 3 days of riding the bike, I felt a little bit of pedal kickback or something weird. So when I was landing, it was kind of like pogoing me off to the left or to the right. I did slow down the rebound, but it didn't feel like rebound. It kind of felt more late than rebound. I don't know, it was a strange feeling, but obviously all these bikes are different and it's just a matter of adapting. And within 3 or 4 rides, I was completely adapted and I wasn't getting that feeling at all. But it's not all gravy, riders. The XR is definitely not perfect. There's a few things I would like to change. And first off, I think it does look really beautiful, but the water bottle holder for me is not in a very comfortable spot. Gravity's fighting it. I would much prefer to see it down here on the battery tube. The kiosk display up the top here, I don't really like the display there. I reckon it would be much better to put it on the down tube like Trek does, or even better, I mean, this is a Bluetooth device. I mean, it actually comes off in your hand. I don't know why they can't inset it into the frame like the Forestel, like the Specialized. I mean, it would make it look much more modern. And as much as I love the Ohlins suspension, I would really like to see low and high speed rebound on both the fork and the shock. And also on the fork, I love that you can change your progression out on the trail. I actually did it a few times, but I don't really like that valve down there. It's very exposed. I kind of think they should put a cap on it like Fox does for the rebound, because if that breaks, it's definitely gonna ruin your day. And for me, the worst part of this bike is the dropper. Maybe I'm really used to those electronic droppers, but I found it really stiff to use, and also a funny sort of shape. I could definitely get my thumb caught between the bar and the dropper, and that is not gonna end well. And one last thing that's not a negative for me, but might be for some other riders, the battery is internal. It cannot be taken out. So if you are thinking about doing an EWS race, or you need to take the battery out to charge it maybe at work, then probably this isn't the bike for you. But I'm gonna say, in all the bikes I've had, the only time I've taken the battery out is when I was racing the EWS. And for me, I think they can build the bikes lighter, and the engineering's better to have the batteries internal. I've been testing the large XR and I'm 183 centimeters. And this has got a reach of 480. I found the reach really good with that 35mm stem, which I love, big bonus for me. If I was really picky, I would say maybe bring it back 5 or 10mm for my liking of riding, but I would say definitely I would not be sizing down or sizing up. The Crafty XR is available in 4 sizes and 2 models. The XR Aluminium, 7,699 euros, and the Carbon XR, which I've been testing, 9,999 euros. And if you look at the build on this bike, you kind of expect it to be around 10 grand. I'd say it's a sensational build. I was really impressed with the D-Max tires and obviously the Ohlins suspension. I might change the brakes because you know I'm not a fan of codes, but that's a personal thing. I would say it's a really good build. I also want to explain the Crafty lineup a little bit more. you have the XR, and you've got two models in that, and that's 170 and 150 to travel. But then you have the other Crafties, which is actually the same frame, same rear travel 150, but only 160 at the front. So making it more a trail bike, and this is more a trail duro bike. But if you like the builds on the other Crafties, you can easily change the air shaft to 170 and make your Crafty more or less into an XR. So who's the XR for? I'm gonna say pretty much everyone. It's a very versatile bike. It climbs really well, it enduros really well, it trail bikes well, it jumps pretty well. Probably not the best like hardcore downhill bike, but it does pretty much everything. I'm gonna say if you're looking for a really planted bike that you can take enduro riding, take trail riding, take it to the occasional bike park, this is a great option. And now, riders, down to the million-dollar question. Would I buy the Crafty XR with my hard-earned cash? I'm gonna say yes. I've had a lot of fun on this bike. So planted, so stable. It really allowed me to push really hard and push those levels of confidence. I feel like I was pushing harder, but I wasn't risking any more. It just allowed me to go a bit harder. So I would be proud to have this bike in my garage. And riders, that's it for today. I hope you liked the Crafty XR review. If you have any questions on this bike or any other e-bike, hit me up, love to help. And you know it, if you have not subscribed to the channel, please do share it with like-minded people, and I'm gonna see you next week.